do not necessarily reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
Liberalism is back in style. Welcome to the evolution.
What if you knew Fox News was just lying to you? How could you watch when you know?
He was voted Variety Entertainer of the Year, the Excellence in the Arts Award. And is one of the highest Arbitron, now Nielsen-rated talk radio hosts in Las Vegas. He is also a refreshing voice of logic and reason. Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Doug Basham.
And good morning, my fellow wokes and Republican jokes. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Doug Basham, and welcome to the Doug Basham Show right here on KSHP in Las Vegas and on social media, and to a genuine demonstration of excellence in broadcasting. Hey everybody, great to see you all again. Oh, where am I? There I are. Great to see you all again. I am Doug Basham, your certified and perhaps certifiable card-carrying member of the Enemy Within Brigade, also known as one radical leftist lunatic who needs to be handled by the American military. I welcome you all to day 23 of Morning in America, morning spelled with a U, of course, as all true patriots who love this country prepare to wave goodbye to their democracy and anxiously await the stroke that just might save America and mankind. My website is DougBasham.com, last name spelled B as in Bob, A-S-H-A-M as in mayhem, DougBasham.com, my email, Doug@DougBasham.com. That said, I extend a warm yet forlorn welcome to those of you listening on KSHP, AM 1400 and 107.1 on your radio dial here in Las Vegas. We are also... Didn't mean to do that. Oh, come on. What's going on? Where I be? Okay, I'm half screen. No, I'm full screen. We're having some fun messing around this morning, folks. By the way, we are also broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X, and we are now back on TikTok again after a week in TikTok jail. Now, if you go to my website, again, that's DougBasham.com, you will discover it's all of one page. At the top, you'll find the show's logo. Underneath 11 links, most to my social media sites. Also want to contact me via email. Now, the two links I would like to call your attention to the most are, 1, my YouTube page, and 2, my TikTok page. On my YouTube page, I would respectfully ask you hit the subscribe button. On TikTok, hit the red follow button. And hey, if you would like to watch this show live and not just listen to it, and why wouldn't you? Obviously, this face was made for television. Also, because this show is very clip intensive, and when I play clips, I play video clips. From my website, go to my YouTube, Facebook, or X pages, whereupon you can indeed watch the show live. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you would like to chat on the radio somewhere in our second half hour together, that's 702-221-SAVE, as in, when it was time to save our democracy, we didn't. And now on to what I have been calling of late our broken news for the day. I do hope you are all ready for your Thanksgiving festivities tomorrow and can find adequate reasons for which to be thankful. That, just might take the sting out of losing your democracy at least a little bit. It's that time of the year when we commemorate that day in 1621, when Native Americans shared a meal with undocumented immigrants who never left. As the old saying goes, give a man some corn, he eats for a day. Teach a man to grow corn, he kills you and steals your land. And because I'll be prepping on Thursday for my show on Friday, I've decided to have my Thanksgiving on Saturday, and I'll do all my prep work on Friday after the show. And if there's anyone listening or watching out there who has no family and is planning to stay home alone on Thanksgiving, please let me know. No, really, please reach out and let me know. I need to borrow some chairs. As Jeffrey Dahmer once exclaimed, no one's going to tell me how many people I can have for Thanksgiving. But I am excited. Thanksgiving is a lot like an orgy to me. I get to disappoint a lot of people at the same time. And I don't get it. Jesus invited prostitutes to dine with him, and he's the light of the world. I do it, and it ruins Thanksgiving. And that reminds me, you know what the worst part is of a Thanksgiving dinner in Kentucky? Having to sit around the dinner table with all the people you've had sex with. And while some say you shouldn't bring up politics at your family's Thanksgiving dinner, I say do it. Think of all the money you'll save on Christmas gifts. And speaking of Christmas, we haven't even had Thanksgiving yet, and the Christmas ads have started already. I was watching my news yesterday, and this commercial came on that made me LOL. That's laugh out loud for all you non-digital people. It's an ad from Target. Here it is.
I can't believe turkeys are only 79 cents a pound this year.
Let me guess, you don't believe in Santa either, do you?
Huh?
These turkey deals are the real deal.
Sarah, did you hear that? It was Santa Claus, and he's like weirdly hot.
Santa Claus, weirdly hot. Cute ad and very creative. Now, I just mentioned that while I'm not doing my Thanksgiving till Saturday, I do have my turkey already. And I did something different this Thanksgiving. I shot my first turkey this year. And I gotta tell you, for a non-gun person, it did feel somewhat satisfying. Scared the living hell out of everyone else in the grocery store, though. I'm also thinking of celebrating Thanksgiving in a more traditional American way this year. I'm going to invite the neighbors over for a huge feast and then kill them and steal their land. And while millions of Americans celebrate Thanksgiving this year, the Native American Indians have reservations. And with all the bad luck the U.S. has seen this year, the worst of which was the election, you'd almost think this country was built on an ancient Indian burial ground. And those Native American Indians should be the first thing we give thanks for. If they had given the pilgrims donkeys instead of turkeys, we'd all be eating ass tomorrow. Conversely, if they'd shot a bobcat, we'd all be eating, well, I'll let you fill in the blank. And I gotta be honest with you, as I always am, several years ago, I didn't realize how racist my family was until I brought my black girlfriend home for Thanksgiving. My wife and kids hated her. And I remember when my son, just 5 years old, said he wanted to say grace before dinner. And with grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends all present, I was proud of him. And I said, go ahead, David. So we all folded our hands, bowed our heads, and my son said, oh God, oh God, oh God, sweet Jesus, yes, oh God, don't stop. Amen. It was a little awkward. And I recall the story when Jeffrey Dahmer was hosting Thanksgiving dinner. His mother leans over to him and says, I really don't like your neighbors, Jeffrey. And you know what Jeffrey said back to his mother, Alex? He said, "That's okay, Mother. Just push them to the side and eat your vegetables." Quick programming note, folks. If you missed the last 2 days' shows, I announced on both of them that this week will be the last week this show will be on this radio station, at least for now. We're on today, obviously. We're off tomorrow, and while I thought we might be doing a rerun of a past show, apparently that's not the case. A sports show will play instead. But let not your hearts be troubled. We'll be back to wrap things up and put a bow on this show on Friday. As for me, I am taking a break from the mind-effing and dangerous insanity of Donald Trump and worse, Trumpism. As I've said before, Trump by himself would just be a senile old man yelling at kids to get off his lawn. But, when a democracy is stupid enough and short-sighted enough to allow what I have called for years today's conservative, corporate-controlled, right-wing propaganda, fascist hate media industrial complex to expand to the point they are able to control the narrative, which the mainstream media inexplicably to me then parrots, this is the result. A completely unqualified conman, grifter, and snake oil salesman, an insufferable malignant narcissist, a serial pathological liar, a 34-count convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, an election denier who incited an attack on our Capitol and has been charged with conspiracy to defraud the American people by trying to steal an election he not only lost, but knew he lost, all to stay out of prison and remain in power. Someone who's been charged with espionage, someone who's facing RICO mob boss charges, can become president of this country. There is no way in holy hell that could happen without the overwhelming and all-encompassing presence and reach of the aforementioned media. And as I keep saying, and will continue to say, as long as I have breath left to say it, nothing will change, nothing, until America realizes that allowing this toxic, noxious, and deadly fascist media industrial complex to exist in a democracy is a clear and present danger and existential threat to our democracy. Period, full stop, end of story. I was very critical of Barack Obama way back in 2008 when he allowed Fox News into the White House press briefing room. No, that is legitimizing the illegitimate. That is normalizing the abnormal. And the First Amendment bit about the free press, it doesn't apply. Fox News is not the press, period. And to treat them as if they are, that is normalizing the head of a monstrous entity that is most certainly not a friend of America. And it was never created to be. From its very inception, it was intended to be a propaganda machine for the right. Fox News was the right's revenge for Richard Nixon. After Nixon was forced out of office by a legitimate and honest mainstream media, the right vowed that never again would a dishonest criminal Republican president be taken down by a legitimate, honest media. Roger Ailes met with Rupert Murdoch, and the seed was planted. And then in short order, the head of the beast rose from the very cesspool of shit from where the seed had been planted and has never stopped growing as its body grew bigger and thicker and wider. And today, its tentacles reach and influence almost every square mile of this nation. And yes, I am only too aware of the veritable shitstorm that would have ensued if they had kicked Fox News out of the White House. But look what happened when they didn't. The right-wing propaganda fascist hate media, led by Fox, spent 8 years spewing pure, unadulterated, racist-based hatred against Obama, to the extent that in 2016, the American people rejected an eminently qualified candidate in Hillary Clinton and elected a completely unqualified sexual degenerate instead. And when his homicidal response to COVID-19 drove him from office, that same right-wing propaganda fascist hate media spent 4 years whitewashing the entirety of Trump's disastrous presidency, to the extent the American people brilliantly sent him back to Washington 3 weeks ago. And there's something else that I've been saying for months now, before the election and then after it. Donald Trump campaigned on lies, and he is going to govern on lies. Here's what he posted on his anti-social media site on Friday. Quote, "I am proud to announce former Attorney General of the great state of Florida, Pam Bondi, as our next Attorney General of the United States. Pam was a prosecutor for nearly 20 years, where she was very tough on violent criminals and made the streets safe for Florida families. Then, as Florida's first female Attorney General, she worked to stop the trafficking of deadly drugs and reduce the tragedy of fentanyl overdose deaths, which have destroyed many families across our country. She did an incredible job that I asked her to serve on our Opioid and Drug Abuse Commission during my first term. We saved many lives." End quote. Now, that's fairly reasonable. I mean, considering the source. Someone else probably wrote it. But when you're an attorney general for an entire state, you have sufficient qualifications to run an agency like the Department of Justice. Further to my point, further to my point that Trump will govern on the lies on which he campaigned, Trump then continued his post by saying, quote, "For too long, the partisan Department of Justice has been weaponized against me and other Republicans. Not anymore. Pam will refocus the DOJ to its intended purpose of fighting crime and making America safe again. I have known Pam for many years. She is smart and tough and is an America First fighter who will do a terrific job as Attorney General." End quote. And here's the rub. He's praising Pam Bondi in the first part, and not unreasonably so. But then he goes to, "The partisan Department of Justice has been weaponized against me and other Republicans," none of whom he gives a damn about, by the way. But that's a lie. And the only context in which it can be true is that the mandate of our Department of Justice is to be weaponized against people when evidence indicates they have committed crimes. And this is something I've often thought and yet have never heard anyone else express, which of course is why you watch and listen to this show, because you will hear things on this show you won't hear anywhere else. But this is something at which the right excels. They can take a genuine liability and turn it into an asset. Democrats have yet to learn that art or skill. Democrats can't even take a phony, dishonest liability, in this case, the weaponization lie, and turn that into an asset. If only they had media personnel who could do that for, oh wait, they do, or rather, they did. If only they'd appreciated it. When Trump and his bobblehead acolytes utter this weaponization lie, why don't Democrats respond like I just did? As in, yes, the Department of Justice is weaponized. The very mandate and patriotic duty of our Department of Justice is to be weaponized against anyone, Republican or Democrat, when a preponderance of evidence is flashing red and strongly suggests they've committed crimes. We would be guilty of a dereliction of our patriotic duty if we then didn't investigate that evidence and, if warranted, pursue impartial justice. Is that so hard? Can't anyone else come up with that? I'm no rocket scientist, and I came up with it, but I haven't heard anyone else come up with it. But Democrats immediately go on defense or just curl up in the fetal position and say nothing. The key, as I have learned it, is to stay on offense. That's exactly what the knuckle-dragging, mouth-breathing Trump cretin does, along with his entire media. Always on offense. Which brings us to why Pam Bondi was chosen to be our next Attorney General after Matt Jailbait Gates withdrew his name for consideration in order to spend more time with the children. Not his children, just children. Several reasons. Number one, and let me preface this by saying it is hardly ethical to choose one of your own attorneys to be the top cop in the country. That's what dictators do. And so, what does Trump do? He has chosen 3 of his own attorneys to serve in positions in the DOJ. And Bondi is one of them. She defended him at his first impeachment trial, although perhaps not that competently. And I'll let you hear MSNBC's Joy Reid's quick comments after she played this clip.
He remained on the board until April of 2019.
Oh, honey.
Nailed it. Oh, honey. Oh, Lord. Number 2, she repeated Trump's lies about his hush money to rig and steal an election trial.
This is just one big press conference trying to smear Donald Trump, trying to hurt Donald Trump.
Do I want to see him in jail? Absolutely not. I wouldn't put it past this judge, though. And President Trump should be allowed to be out on the campaign trail every single day. This trial shouldn't even be going until after the election.
Let me ask.
Listen, all the rights here, I'm a prosecutor, former prosecutor. Yeah, all the rights here go to the defendant because it's his liberty at stake, and that has not been happening in this courtroom. This case should have never, ever been brought.
Reason number 3, she's an election denier, and again, we'll hear Joy Reid's comment after she played this clip.
We do have evidence of cheating, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but we are still on the ground in Pennsylvania. I'm here right now, and we are not going anywhere until they declare that we won Pennsylvania.
Yeah, no. Trump did not win Pennsylvania in 2020.
Loves me some Joy Reid. And that's not the only time Bondi demonstrated her election-denying dishonesty. And let me preface this with a story from the New York Times on Friday regarding the Pam Bondi Trump University illegal scandal. Quote, in 2013, Ms. Bondi's office received nearly 24 complaints about Trump's short-lived for-profit university, and her aides said she was considering joining a multi-state lawsuit brought on behalf of students who claimed they had been cheated. 4 days later, Ms. Bondi's Political Action Committee received a $25,000 contribution from a nonprofit funded by Mr. Trump. She never joined the lawsuit. Both Mr. Trump and Ms. Bondi have denied a quid pro quo, but Mr. Trump had to pay a $2,500 fine in 2016 for violating federal tax laws in making the contribution. After Mr. Biden won the 2020 presidential election, Ms. Bondi supported Mr. Trump's fabricated claims of election fraud. In November, Ms. Bondi deflected when a Fox News host asked her to back up her assertion that fake ballots for Mr. Biden were pouring into tabulation centers. End quote. And before we play that clip, are you serious? Trump makes a donation to quash an investigation, a donation that is illegal, and he only has to pay a fine of $2,500? I thought normal bribery cases were punished more harshly than that. But donating to make an investigation go away? $2,500? That's it? We'll now watch that, as the New York Times called it, deflection. And this clip alone will show you not only how full of crap these election deniers and liars like Pam Bondi are, but that they know they're full of crap and lying.
Every vote that came in late, that was postmarked late, that
November 4th?
discounts after November 4th. On November 4th. That discounts, on November 4th, that discounts every legal vote that came in. So that means all the good residents who are all supporting us in Pennsylvania, their votes don't count by these fake ballots that are coming in late.
What,
and back
Pam?
to the observation, they're not letting us watch the process.
Pam, did you just say fake ballots?
There could be. That's the problem.
First, discounting late ballots. Many of those ballots are votes from our service members serving overseas all over the world. But yeah, tell me again how the GOP is the party that supports the troops. That has never been true, and it is still not true. Second, did you catch her qualifier that shows she's full of crap and knows she's full of crap? Did you just say fake ballots, Pam? Well, there could be. Let's see how this exchange continued. And by the way, if you didn't notice already, as you watch this clip, ask yourself, have you ever seen three people on a panel who look stupider than these three? Seriously, look at their faces as Bondi rambles and lies.
Pam, did you just say fake ballots?
There could be. That's the problem. If they're letting,
Do you
we
have
don't
any,
know, Steve.
Do you have you heard stories of, ballots that are fake? And if so, just tell us what you know.
Well, we know that ballots have been dumped. There were ballots that were found early on. We've heard that people were receiving ballots that were dead. The thing that's happening all over the country.
Were they legal ballots?
Well, no, not if people were receiving ballots where they were deceased. That's the problem. And that's why the supervisor of elections cannot extend. She wants to keep extending this process.
First, do you see what I mean? What a stupid looking panel. And not that I'm one to talk, but Brian Kilmeade looked like he hadn't slept in a month. Right there with you, Brian. Right there with you. But at least I try and look awake. Second, what did she say? What do these two even mean? There were ballots that were dumped and ballots that were found. And if you can make sense of those two, how do either of them even remotely suggest Democrats were cheating? They don't. But you see, the demographic to which Bondi is appealing, namely Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base, they have had it drilled into their otherwise empty heads for years that Democrats are cheaters. It doesn't matter what some lame and dishonest tripe is spewed by someone like Pam Bondi or the Orange Trader. It's just automatically assumed whatever they say, it equates with Democrats cheating. More on that in a sec. But then she mentioned ballots being mailed to people who are deceased. First, that's not illegal. If no one notifies the proper election authorities that someone has died, how are they to know they're dead? Sending a ballot to a dead person in and of itself is not illegal. The only way the term illegal would factor in would be if someone then took that ballot that was intended for a now deceased person and filled it out illegally. And what we have learned from past elections, including right here in Las Vegas, the people who did use a dead person's ballot and vote illegally, they voted for Trump, and they were caught. But the right would have you believe that hundreds of thousands of fake ballots weren't caught. We can catch individual cheaters, but not thousands upon thousands. It is a stupid premise and an insulting one, not to mention a brazen lie. But again, you see, the target audience for all the right stupid premises and lies, they're simply not smart enough to nuance it like I just did. Now, does that mean I'm smarter than the average Trumper? Of course that's what it means. Now, in fairness, it's a low bar. You don't exactly have to be an Olympic pole vaulter to clear it.
I'm smarter than the average bear, yeah.
And I quote myself, I'm smarter than the average bear.
Hey, I f***ing hate this place and I want to get the f*** out, boob.
What crawled up your ass, Yogi?
Ranger Smith is a massive chode, and the people who camp here are douchebags.
You exaggerate.
Hey, asshole! F*** you, boob. I'm so smart it hurts.
And the sad truth remains, Pam Bondi knows the facts. But facts don't matter a hill of beans when you're trying to kiss up to a dictator wannabe who is completely divorced from facts himself. In fact, it's an asset. Facts are the last thing a pathological liar wants to hear. I mean, which makes sense, doesn't it? If you're not going to speak them, why would you want to hear them? And in Pam Bondi's case, it seems to have worked. Right now, she's the presumptive nominee to be our next Attorney General. Reason number 4, Cassidy Hutchinson testified under oath before the January 6th Select Committee that Pam Bondi tried to influence her testimony prior to her testifying. You're starting to see why Trump wants her as his Attorney General / his attorney, right? And 5th, she's all down with Trump's lies that the DOJ is weaponized against Trump, and therefore the investigators and prosecutors need to be investigated.
When Republicans take back the White House, and we will, you know what's going to happen? The Department of Justice, the prosecutors will be prosecuted, the bad ones. The investigators will be investigated because the deep state, last term for President Trump, they were hiding in the shadows. But now they have a spotlight on them, and they can all be investigated.
I'm sorry. I have said more times on this show than I can recall, those who look and are the stupidest are those who repeat those two stupid lies, fake news and deep state. Neither are true, neither exist. And when you utter one of these two, you demonstrate clearly that you are not a serious person, and you are someone who is only too willing to repeat stupid lies that you know are stupid lies in order to appeal to your equally stupid and or brainwashed base. One of my favorites, let me rewind that and try it again. One of my favorites, NBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin, had this to say after hearing the deep state clip we played.
I think we should take Pam Bondi at her word until she disavows that word during her confirmation hearings or something else. But I think there's at least a will there to begin to do an investigation, as she says, of the people like Jack Smith or state prosecutors who have been involved in prosecuting Donald Trump. And I think it's fair to ask her during those confirmation hearings, what would you be investigating these people for? What federal criminal statutes do you believe that they could have violated? We're not asking you to say definitively that they have violated them, but when you went on television in August of 2023 and said those people should be investigated, what were you thinking could be the nature of that investigation, and does that constitute or rise to the level of criminal activity in your mind? That's a fair question, because to both Andrew and David's point, there is a difference between qualifications and fitness. Competence and fitness are not the same thing, and I would say that fitness for this office includes one's character and is not just a question of being devoid of allegations of sexual misconduct. Your character is also a question of, will you follow the facts and follow the law wherever they take you, even if they're not where Donald Trump has already plotted that he wants you to go?
Former Republican Congressman from Florida, David Jolly, had this to say regarding Pam Bondi.
Pam Bondi is eminently qualified to run the department. Lisa's right, no DOJ experience, but she is 8 years as Attorney General of the state of Florida. She's eminently qualified. She's also a very likable person. I say that not because I have a personal friendship, but Democrats and Republicans alike consider her to be a professional. And so I think she'll do very well in the nomination hearing. She also hasn't been accused credibly of sexual misconduct or sex trafficking. So what this sets up, though, is really fascinating, Alicia, and it's this. This nomination hearing now becomes specifically not about the fitness of the nominee, like we were discussing with Matt Gaetz, but about Donald Trump's view of the Department of Justice and about Pam Bondi's willingness to execute on Donald Trump's agenda. Now this goes very quickly, the questioning does in a Senate confirmation hearing, to do you think the Department of Justice should be an arm of the executive office of the president? Do you think that if Donald Trump suggests you prosecute a specific individual, that you have a duty to the president to honor that wish? And we've seen this game before on Capitol Hill. Pam Bondi cannot answer those questions any other way but how Donald Trump wants those questions answered. And so however likable she is and however qualified she is, we now have a national conversation about whether or not Donald Trump's Attorney General truly is intended to execute on an enemies list, to investigate the media. What are the other priorities of an Attorney General Pam Bondi? I believe she will sail through the nomination process on a strictly partisan line vote. And that partisan line vote will be because this will be Donald Trump's new view of a unitary executive using the Department of Justice as an arm of the executive office of the president. There will be some hard questions for Pam Bondi, no question. You bring up the relationship with Brian Ballard. Brian Ballard, one of the most powerful Florida lobbyists, not having a D.C. firm until Donald Trump gets elected, and then he sets up shop in D.C. and populates his firm with the likes of Susie Wiles, Pam Bondi, and other people exceedingly close to Donald Trump. And so you can follow Pam Bondi's career from a relatively mainline Republican, and then Donald Trump hits the scene, and she's part of Team Trump. And over the last 8 years has demonstrated that loyalty, that willingness to really do anything he asked, and raises some really hard questions then. Do you think the election was stolen in 2020? What about those comments in Pennsylvania? I think this will be a hard confirmation hearing for Pam Bondi. I think she'll get through it, but I think it's going to open up the lens a little bit to what 4 years of Donald Trump's DOJ is really intended to look like.
As always, well said. Andrew Weissmann, former DOJ official, also the lead prosecutor in the Robert Mueller investigation. And tell me again why that was a hoax? Weissmann made these salient points on Pam Bondi, in particular, his comment on the Trump University scandal.
I think that what we do know right now is all of her prior statements and her record. And I think one thing that is important is for our viewers not to sort of recalibrate simply because there's sort of a new normal that she's not Matt Gaetz. That's not the standard for whether somebody should be the Attorney General of the United States. It's also not the standard that you've been a state prosecutor for many, many years. Absolutely, she has that experience. But the real issue is, I think, sort of the second part of what David was talking about, which is, one, does she believe in that facts and law are what is supposed to govern the Department of Justice and all decision making? Two, do you think it's right for the president to say who you should prosecute and who you should not prosecute? And so questions like, do you believe there was a stolen election in 2020 are totally appropriate ones. When she talks about going after, political enemies of Donald Trump, is that the appropriate role for the Department of Justice? She should have to defend and justify those prior statements or walk them back, because that is really the critical issue. It's not whether you are Matt Gaetz, who is completely unqualified. It is not whether you have serious sexual criminal investigation that there's a report that you're trying to not make public. And so I think she does have a lot to answer for. And finally, on the $25,000 that you began the show with, Alicia, I think there's sort of two issues. Obviously, she and Donald Trump say there was no quid pro quo. That is certainly an area worthy of questioning to see whether that in fact is true. But my issue with that is, let's assume there was no quid pro quo. That's a big assumption, but let's assume that. What prosecutor takes $25,000 from somebody who is under investigation? That simply raises the specter of really, really poor ethics and really poor judgment. And that is the foundation of that is sort of the opposite of what you want in the Attorney General of the United States.
That was a great point. Even if it wasn't the bribe most intellectually honest people believe it was, she still took a $25,000 donation from someone she knew was under investigation. Who does that? No one who has respect for our rule of law. But again, it looks like it paid off, at least until a confirmation hearing, barring any earth-shattering news in the interim. The aforementioned David Jolly had more to say and illustrates the depth to which this nation has sunk in the era and error of Donald Trump.
I also think there's something that's fascinating about this. In 2017, this speaks to what I've been discussing, her ability to handle confirmation hearing, as well as the $25,000 check. She was considered for a nomination in 2017, but the politics were so different, even though Donald Trump had just landed on the scene, that she was the one that was considered probably unconfirmable. They weren't sure in 2017 that she could get through a Senate confirmation hearing, and therefore she wasn't nominated, perhaps because she wasn't ready for prime time, or perhaps this question around ethics of the $25,000 contribution. We're so far past that now, 8 years later, given the Gates and Hegseth nominations and otherwise. I think what this will ultimately come down to, I love Lisa's comparison to Janet Reno in terms of her qualifications, but in terms of how she'll perform, it's Bill Barr. She'll be the Bill Barr of this administration and test every boundary that Bill Barr tested for Trump. The question is there a line she won't cross, like Bill Barr faced, or will she go all the way?
Both interesting and telling. 8 years ago, Pam Bondi was considered unconfirmable. But now, in light of the Matt Jailbait Gates and Pete Hogseth announcements and ensuing aftermath, and the incredibly low bar that is set, she almost looks good by comparison. And by the way, perhaps the most salient point of all was made by late-night host the incomparable Stephen Colbert, and this is from 8 years ago.
One thing's for sure, Pam Bondi is the only person in the world ever to make money from Trump University, other than Donald Trump.
And just for kicks and giggles, did you ever see or hear this ad, the orange hemorrhoid cut for his Trump University sham and scam?
At Trump University, we teach success. That's what it's all about, success. It's going to happen to you.
Donald Trump is without question the world's most famous businessman. As a real estate developer, he has reshaped the New York skyline with some of that great city's most prestigious and elegant buildings. Now, Donald Trump brings his years of experience to the world of business education with the launch of Trump University.
If you're going to achieve anything, you have to take action. And action is what Trump University is all about. But action is just a small part of Trump University. Trump University is about knowledge, about a lot of different things. Above all, it's about how to become successful. We're going to have professors and adjunct professors that are absolutely terrific people, terrific brains, successful. We are going to have the best of the best. And honestly, if you don't learn from them, if you don't learn from me, if you don't learn from the people that we're going to be putting forward, and these are all people that are hand-picked by me, then you're just not going to make it in terms of the world of success. I think the biggest step towards success is going to be sign up at Trump University. We're going to teach you about business. We're going to teach you better than the business schools are going to teach you. And I went to the best business school. We're going to teach you better. It's going to be a shorter process. It's not going to involve years and years of your life. It's going to be less expensive, and I think it's going to be a better education. And it's going to be what you need to know. So we're going to teach you business. We're going to teach you life. We're going to teach you salesmanship. We're going to teach you what you need to know. And we're going to also make sure that no matter what you do, as I said before, you're going to love it. Because if you don't love it, it's never, ever going to work.
What a colossal crock. This shameless grifter lies as easily as he breathes. And one final thing about that ad. First of all, does anyone have any doubt Trump wrote it himself? Of course he did. But second, did you hear how it began? It said Donald Trump is without question the world's most famous businessman. He didn't say the most successful businessman. He said the most famous, because that's what insatiable media attention whores do. And that's what Trump is. And so, as is always the case, his massive yet fragile ego is the determining factor in anything he says or does. It would have served his grift and scam further if he had said successful. But nope, he chose famous. Just an observation, and the more you know. But now, one last clip before we head to the phones. Let's listen to Tristan Snell, the man who prosecuted the Trump University case and won a settlement of $25 million.
The whole thing was a scam. It was basically a wealth creation seminar bait and switch scheme wrapped in the gold veneer of the Trump brand. The clip that you played a few minutes ago had one of the big lies in there, saying that Trump had handpicked all of the instructors. He never met any of them, never had anything to do with any of them. So the whole thing, you could go on, but they promised that people would learn everything they needed to know to invest in real estate, and then they never actually delivered on any of it.
Yeah. And didn't it, it also, in a sense, led to the second trial that Donald Trump faced in New York, which was his charity being delisted. That's right. Talk a little bit about that, because the actual donation to Pam Bondi's PAC came from his charity.
That's right. So it was both the source of the Bondi scandal, and then it led to the Trump Foundation. My colleagues in the Charities Bureau at the time at the New York Attorney General's office then brought that case, focusing on that illegality and others and other fraud that occurred, and then shut down the foundation and managed to get a $2 million victory.
So just so that people understand kind of where we are in terms of the corruption aspect of it, and that Letitia James, who then took over the as U.S. as Attorney General here in the state of New York, she wasn't just fishing after Trump. I mean, there were things that led to her going after Donald Trump's companies and his charities.
Trump was already a recidivist before Letitia James came into office. The notion that she was somehow looking for targeting Trump, that's crazy. It's just like, okay, we have a list of all of the people who have been criming, and he's on it. Maybe we should keep on looking into those people who have been criming.
So, when Trump says, everybody that's going to teach you at Trump University was handpicked by me, every single one of them, that's your first cue. He never met any of them. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you would like to chat in our waning moments together today, remember, we're off tomorrow. A sports show will play. Then we'll be back on Friday to wrap this show up and put a big Thanksgiving bow on top of it. 221-7283 is the number. That's area code 702-221-SAVE or SAVE. To the phones we charge, and we'll begin with my old friend and nemesis, JD. You're first. Thanks for calling.
Well, I just called, Doug, to wish you a very happy holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and to all your callers who seem to have deserted you in your time of need, to wish all of those he, hims, and his a happy holiday. And as you ride off into the sunset, give you some hope. That you will survive, and you will be back someday down the road. And my hope to you, my advice to you would be turn it off for a while. If I could survive 4 years of Biden, 8 years of the Obamas, and 8 years of Bill and Hillary, you can survive 4 more years of the Trumpster.
Oh, well, I'll comment on that. I might be able to survive 4 more years of Trump. In fact, I will. Whether I make a return to the radio or not, I will survive 4 more years of Trump. The question is, will our nation and its democracy?
I didn't wish to make a political call. I just wish to wish you well, and say la guerre, as the French say, such is war.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your kind wishes, JD. You know I feel the same towards you. People may not know this, but JD and I sometimes fight like cats and dogs on the air. We yell at one another, we hang up on one another, and then off the air we'll sit down and have like a half an hour friendly conversation. Maybe I shouldn't have let that slip, but it's the truth, JD.
Well, it just goes to show if people in this country would be willing to listen to the other side, and I mean listen, not try and form a response.
Well, wait a minute. You think when you and I speak off the air, I'm actually listening to you? I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh!
I'm kidding.
A Caesar. There he goes with the knife, Caesar. Oh my! I'm trying to be gracious here. And where are all your other callers? Like I said, that we're so faithful to you, and in your time of need, your last shows, they've deserted you.
Well, let me respond to that best way I know how. First of all, it isn't in my time of need. I've been on the air for a couple months now. I have had plenty of opportunity to pursue avenues to stay on the air, let's say to secure more financing. After the election, I haven't pursued one of them because, as I said the day after the election, I'm not sure I want to keep doing this with Trump in office. So it's not really my time. It's not really my time of need. I made this decision freely. And I tell you something else, why a lot of them haven't been calling, and I know this for a fact, a lot of them have just washed their hands of politics and they're done.
Well, I find that hard to believe. If you believe in what you believe in, you fight to the end. There's no, no surrender. But the other thing, if we talk off the air, you have a talent that I was going to suggest this weeks ago, after the first week or so of the election, to try and switch your topics or whatever. There's so much going on in the world, the country, our town, our state. There's so many things that are of interest and important. And with your research that you do on items, you could bring a show to the airwaves that would be productive and informative and just be non-political as much as you can. But
well, you're absolutely right, JD. With my skill and adeptness for research, I could bring you a show on a million other different topics, all of which would serve as a major deflection for the trouble this country is in now that Trump's back in office. But we're not going to make this call political.
And that might be the direction you might want to look at.
Well, we'll see. Hey, JD, I got to run. I appreciate your call. You have a good Thanksgiving and a good Christmas season as well.
Bye-bye. Take
care. Well, we don't have time for any more phone calls today, but that's true. I have heard from some of my regular callers, callers on the air. I have heard from them off the air, and they've told me that they've washed their hands. They are disgusted with the results of the election, and quite frankly, they are done. Again, folks, I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you calling. Again, we're off tomorrow. A sports show will play. We'll be back on Friday to wrap it all up. Hopefully with you. Until then, take care.
Las Vegas Commercial Real Estate Radio. The brand